Hey everybody, welcome back, and today we're going to talk about, in this lesson, anatomy of an HTML page, and how's that different from Xhtml. So let's go ahead and dive in. You'll see here, I have a little example on here, and this is a basic HTML outline. And as you can see here, this HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language, and it is a markup language, which means we use a series of tags here, as you can see, that go around content to tell the web browser what to do with that content. And you can see the main framework here that we have is we have an open HTML tag and at the end a close HTML. So basically that tells the browser that, hey, I'm going to give you some HTML here. Inside the HTML framework you have the head up here. Here's the head. And below that you have the body. Let's talk about the head for a second. Up in the header section, this contains elements that pertain to the page, but not necessarily the content on the page. For example, in this one we have a title tag, and inside the title it says my web page. Now this is what shows up, if you bookmark a page, it shows up in the title of the browser, that kind of thing. This can include things like external style sheets, script information. They can have a style sheet attached to it. So it's basically information that the browser needs to know about the page, but not the actual content itself. Now the actual content itself goes on the body tag down here. So this is the second part. You have the head, it's the first part, the body is the second part. You can see here I have a very extensive web page. It just has some text that says this is my web page. So anyway, that's basically what you're dealing with in HTML. Now, Xhtml has some differences in this. Let me close this document. I'll bring up another one here. And this is what an Xhtml document looks like. Now, why Xhtml? Well, it's an extended hypertext markup language. And what it is an attempt to define some standards. And this helps a number of people. It helps you as a designer, first of all, because hopefully in the future, it still exists a problem, but you'll be able to have your web page more easily look the same across browsers and platforms, things like that. It also, having a standards environment, people who code and make the actual browsers, if they follow these, then technically we'll have more consistency across browsers. So what do you need to know as a designer as you're programming for Xhtml? Well, the first thing you need to have in here, up at the top here, is you have to declare the document type. I'm going to highlight that for you. You can see what this is. This is document type, HTML, and it's public, and it says, it's basically the W3C, which is the W3 consortium, which mandates all this stuff. This is the document type declaration. It's XHTML 1.0 transitional English. That's what EN is. There are other types. Look it up on Wikipedia if you are interested in any of those, but this is a commonly used document type. You also have a link over here to, it's actually a file on the W3.org site, and if you go download that file, it actually comes up and gives you all the specifications you need to know about programming Xhtml. But we'll move on here. The next thing you need to have is what's called an XML namespace, and this goes in as an attribute in the HTML tag. Right at the top, HTML, XMLNS, and then that gives a link. And basically what this is doing is it's telling the browser, hey, here's all the tags and attributes that I'm allowed to use in here, and this is what I'm going to use, and so I'm going to choose from these. And that link will have everything, that you need in your document here. And then last but not least, up in the head of the document, and this is kind of nitpicky, it looks confusing, but it's a meta tag, and it's an HTTP equivalent, which is going to be content type, and the context is text HTML character set ISO 8959-1. Now all this is telling it is basically when you make an HTML document, it contains text, and so we're just simply giving the browser the character set that we're using. Most web pages will render without it. It'll pick a default, but it's good to have in there. So all this to say, I'm going to stop here for a second. And this is a lot to remember, and it's a lot to type out by hand each time. Now, if you're using Dreamweaver, Dreamweaver automatically puts all this in there when you create a new document, as long as you tell it that you want an XHTML document, not a plain Jane HTML. And it will automatically fill these out for you. I have another video that I'm going to put up that has some shortcuts, so if you're like me and you like to use a text editor for everything, there's some really handy shortcuts for just piping this information in there that'll help considerably speed up the process, because God knows we have other things we want to do than rather just coding all day. So anyway, then a couple rules you need to know about Xhtml as we go on. And rule number one here, this is really important. Rule number one is that all tags must be in lowercase. So you can see I have my body tag, the image tag, the HTML tag, title tag. It's all in lowercase, and that's very important. The old HTML specifications used to allow for mix, things like that. But remember, we're going for standards here. And if we're going to have a standard, we're going to say that all tags are in lowercase. Okay, period, end of sentence. So you cannot go in here and do an image tag with capital IMG. That is not allowed in XHTML. You'll return errors, and I'll show you how to validate this in a second. So anyways, you can see all tags must be lowercase. Second of all, tags that don't create content, that are generally empty, are self-closing. Okay, and let me show you how this works. In HTML, you used to be able to do an image tag like this. You do img source equals the image .jpg, let's say, and then you would come over here and you would do a close tag for it, because all tags open must close. Otherwise you'll have an error. Well, in an image tag, for instance, there's never content in here. It's always empty. So in the XHTML specification, it's simply saying, okay, no, we don't need that. That's extra stuff. We're going for a standard here. So the second example down here is how you can see how a tag can self-close if it's always empty. And what it does is basically you take off the end, you put a backslash, and then close it off. Okay, so that's how you're going to do it. And there are only a handful of tags that do this. You're seeing two of them on this page. There's the image tag up here in the head. There's the meta tag. That one is self-closing if you look here at the end. And there's a couple others. There's the break tag if you want a line break, the BR tag. There's the HR tag, the horizontal rule. So there's not a whole lot of them, but just remember that if it never contains content, you can self-close it off, and it makes life easier. And then last but not least, and this is kind of nitpicky, but you must always on an attribute. So for instance, in the image tag, you're going to have a source here, and it's going to be the image.jpg, and you're going to have quotes around it. You must have quotes, because remember in HTML specification, you would be allowed to do things like this. If you're doing a table, you could do width equals 500 pixels like that. No, you can't do that without quotes anymore. You must have quotes around it. Sorry, I have an automatic quote there. So anyway, so quotes. Oh, and one last thing, and this is one of the most specific cases of this. The image tag must contain this alt attribute. Okay, so you see on the second one here, it says image source equals my image.jpg, alt equals flower. What the alt tag does is it provides the browser with alternative content. So for instance, if your viewer is viewing the website and they've got images turned off, let's say, or images missing, something like that, you want some alternative content to come up, and this would be text in this case. Now you may leave these blank if you want. I don't really recommend it, but it must be there. This will validate, for instance, if I just make one and leave it blank. I would recommend putting some content in there. You just never know, especially now with mobile content and cell phones and all other kinds of devices that can be used to surf the internet other than a computer. Necessarily, you might want to have these alt tags filled up. Plus, they help with search engine results. So anyway, that's basically the lowdown on XHTML. It's really pretty easy. What you want to remember when you're doing this is just think of it this way. Think of your XHTML documents as just a framework. It just contains the content and basic instructions as to what the browser needs to do to that content. What you're going to do for the heavy lifting is you're going to use CSS and JavaScript, which we'll cover later. But it makes everything easy. It makes it separate. When you have a problem with something, a bug, and you realize it's a misspelling, well, you know that's in the HTML document. If it's the way something looks, it might be in the CSS document. It makes troubleshooting and debugging a lot easier in the end. So anyway, there's lesson 1 for you, and we'll see you next time.